Okay, let's get stuck in. Ryan Naylor, big welcome to the Your PT pod. It's a privilege to have you in the office today. Enjoyed our little trip around Swansea earlier?
Yeah, it was good. Very nice. Very nice day.
It's beautiful today, isn't it?
Literally lovely.
It's one of the best places on the planet, I reckon, when when the weather's good. But we only get that 4 days a year.
Well, I'm lucky that I come on one of the 4 days a year. It is lovely.
Yeah, no, so it's a pleasure to host you. But you're looking well. Are you in peak training at the moment?
Yeah, starting to get into a training peak. Hopefully for a few competitions this summer. Well, definitely 2. So I've got Boltzplatz, which is a heavy German show, in 3 weeks. And then I've got Ultimate World Championships for 105 kilos.
Nice.
Again in Germany. So
for like people listening to this who that might be completely alien to, we'll talk a little bit about what you do outside of your work environment.
So I've always been an athlete, apart from when I was about 15 and my dad told me I was not an athlete. So I'd say I've always been an athlete, probably from 15 onwards. I've got pedigree in 3 sports, so that've been judo, rugby, and now strongman. So I've been in strongman now for 7 or 8 years, and I've been lucky enough to compete as a 105 internationally. So this would be my 3rd World Championships, all in Germany. So I feel like I spend my whole year preparing to go back to Germany. Fortunately, I quite like it over there. It's not the end of the world. So that, and then I've also done a few comps like in Latvia and places like that.
Nice. It seems to be a big, strong community actually in Europe.
Massive in Europe and big in the US. Europe, US, the UK is very big. Australia and New Zealand or Australasia are a big growing sort of strongman area. One of the coaches at my gym, Jonah, he come directly from Geelong, well, Ballarat, Tarang, those sort of areas, New South Wales, and he moved directly to England to work out of my gym. So yeah, it's getting bigger over there for sure. But the competitions are the biggest and most frequent in the UK and North America.
Yeah. And we were talking about kind of like deadlift technique earlier, weren't we? So I'm sure we'll dive into that today because obviously this podcast is shaped towards personal trainers and helping them develop their core skill set and give some relevant information. No better person than a practicing strongman.
No.
To give some advice on strength, yeah? So
yeah, well, I mean, the thing is that when people ask what I do for a living, I don't really do anything. I just kind of meander through many things. But I would say I call myself a strength coach or a strength conditioning consultant is what I call myself these days, which is a wild one. But the reality is I'm a personal trainer, right? That is my bread and butter. My trade is personal training. I've just meandered through different titles because of what I do now more in my day-to-day.
Yeah. And you've carved yourself a phenomenal career in this space as well. So we know each other primarily through your role with Technogym as a master trainer, which for me is one of the best kept secrets of the fitness industry. The role of master trainer or educator with a global leading brand is a phenomenal opportunity and a phenomenal springboard to work with diverse groups of fitness professionals. So
100%, I would probably say the best thing that ever happened to my career is working with Technogym. I was very purist, and I was very lucky to get into Technogym at a time in my career when I probably shouldn't have been there. I think they took a punt on me, and I think I've paid that back in time, which is good. But the head of education, Luke, took a punt on me, and I remember very well, he told me to take my purist hat on, put my other hat on, and start thinking about more, not just think solely about strength and conditioning or how things I believe should be done, but to look outside. And at that point in time, I wouldn't have even been acquainted with heart rate training. Yeah. So for me, it was massive because it opened my spectrum of influence.
Absolutely. So you mentioned Technogym or Luke took a punt back in there.
100%.
Why would you say that?
My interview was probably the worst interview I've ever done.
I've seen some shockers, mine. So
well, from my personal standards. So I had to demonstrate how to use a curved treadmill, the skill mill, and that went fine. And then he was like, well, can you do the same thing with the DAP? Now, I wasn't an educator then, I was a personal trainer. I'm used to training people, not showing people the ins and outs of a piece of equipment. So I felt like I fell flat on my face. So I was like, got in the car, drove home. Thought, well, it's just one of those, it's a notched up opportunity that didn't go my way, it wasn't meant to be. And then, I got a call and was like, we'd like to offer you the job. And I was like, well, they took a punt. So, yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't through like age or experience, things like that. You just had a gut feel that, you didn't put your best foot forward, but they saw something in you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 33 now. I would still be the youngest master trainer in the team by probably 2 years, I think. However, one of the most experienced due to exposure. I don't think age has anything to do with it.
I totally agree.
I used to, believe me. But not anymore, no.
So that was a bit of sort of self-doubt creeping in, that I'm maybe not ready for it. But every time I speak to you, Ryan, you always come across as just a super grounded, educated person. And I think you convey that very well. So there's in my mind, it's not a coincidence that you've managed to develop such a great career within the health and fitness space.
Certainly. So John Danaher, who is Gordon Ryan GSP, he's their jiu-jitsu coach, very famous coach in the combat world, always says that confidence is an algorithm. And the more you feed the algorithm, the more confident you get. So I come across as very confident because I've been feeding the algorithm. I've been feeding the algorithm a lot, to the point of where I believe knowledge is our biggest asset. So if I can use my knowledge and leverage it to help my career, I will. Yeah. Now I need the knowledge first. So once I have that algorithm, I'm very confident. So if you give me a topic and you need to put me into the abyss, I'll come out smelling the roses, but I'm very nervous. Yeah. I just make sure I've got the confidence.
And just mask it. And sometimes, you've just got to fake it sort of thing, haven't you? Just to get to the point where you are competent. But I mean, the role of Technogym Master Trainer, you've worked at the Olympics, you've worked in all the boutique gyms in London, around the UK. It's put you on sort of a global scene, really, from an education perspective. But how did you have aspirations of becoming a master trainer when you started, or was this something that just evolved as you got to know the industry a bit more?
I remember the first time I ever wanted to be a master trainer was when I found out they existed.
Yeah.
As you said, they're a well-kept secret. So our role effectively is to train the industry on concepts, methodologies, and obviously our products based on who we work for. Now, I work with and for the biggest equipment company in the world, Technogym. They're worth, I think, $1.83 billion at the moment, which I found out last year, which is pretty exceptional. Well done, coming from a shed in Cesena to being where they are now is wild. And it shows massive dividend across the whole business internationally. The first ever master trainer I saw was a ex-professional cyclist teaching us how to use Kaiser. He was excellent. He reminds me of myself now, I suppose, not in his excellence, in actually all his flaws. He was rushing around, knew a lot of stuff, but was trying to hold it together. And I would say that's definitely a me trait. When you've got a lot going on, you're constantly trying to put out fires and trying to make sure everything works. And he'd just come back from being a professional cyclist, and now he was a master trainer for Kaiser. And I was like, how'd you get into that? And he was like, well, no one really knows. Like, it's one of those things that just happens if it's meant to. So I've seen myself as incredibly fortunate that it did happen, but I always wanted to do it because of seeing kind of his lifestyle, I suppose. I enjoyed that traveling. I'd done it in the past with sales for gyms, and I thought to myself, I do enjoy the travel. I don't want to be in the same place all the time. And I do want to work with trainers and make them better and be able to enhance their delivery. I don't think I got the same satisfaction for training people one-to-one anymore. I got more of a satisfaction for helping trainers that were stuck, because that was my problem. Yeah. I think I got way more from it, and the public speaking element of being able to take knowledge that I've learned and make people better and the industry better. I think I took a lot more from that than training one-to-one.
Yeah. So it's such a vital mechanism, in my opinion. Like, undoubtedly, Technogym are the leaders, for equipment, and they have been for a number of years. But the master trainers are almost like the glue that connects the fitness professionals with the products and the experience that you get with Technogym. So it's a vital part of the education cycle that the master trainers provide. I think it would be good to, firstly, for me to differentiate, because in your PT's world, we also have master trainers, but which is kind of a licensing model. So when a personal trainer gets to a point where they might be delivering 40 hours a week PT, what do they do then? Well, they can take out a master license and they can have PTs working under them. So it opens up another 40 hours and maybe 2. And then you got 80 hours. So it overcomes some of the common kind of issues that we see with progressions with fitness professionals. But in an education sense, with your work with Technogym, what does a typical day look like, right? And if you're assigned a job, what does that look like from start to finish?
Well, first things first, I've come across this master trainer before. So someone said, that's why we're called educators now. So someone once said, oh, I'm a master trainer too. And I was like, what makes you a master trainer? I was like, oh, that I do more than 20 hours of personal training in a week. I was like, cool, that's what I do in 2 days at the time. Because I actually have accrued 90,000 hours of personal training. I think it was something wild. So I laughed and I was like, that's interesting. We're not the same.
It's a big difference.
Like, not like one of those things where you try to put the ego, but then you're like, we're not the same. So my day-to-day, well, nowadays it's very different. Traditionally, I would go to a site, I would work with a team of trainers, help them understand how to get the most out of their products to work with their clients and members and make sure they have the best member journey as possible. So when that member walks through and they communicate, whether it be with a secretary or a receptionist or a general manager or a fitness manager or, a PT or a class instructor, they truly understand their product and they truly know why they're doing it. And also to help the business model and the kit speak to each other, because we've designed it in that way for a reason. We have some incredibly talented sales directors, sales account managers at Technogym that help design these facilities, and they work in a certain way from the top down for us. So, as a global company, we really think about how gyms should look, and we innovate the products to take the industry forward. So the trainers need to know that, and often they don't. They're like, why is my gym designed like this? Why is this here? And also sometimes that's the operator's fault. And sometimes that's the PT's fault in regards to them not moving with the times. So it's a 50-50. So my job's kind of to go in that situation, make it all good, understand that this is a good setup, or celebrate the setup and say how good it is and get them on board and make sure they really understand. For example, the 2 products that I would say in our repertoire which are ridiculous. So if I took a normal layman off the street and was like, look at this, is the skill run and is BioStrength. Now I am incredibly biased to BioStrength because it is my baby. Skill run is a treadmill that allows us to run at 30 kilometers an hour on a 25-degree incline or a -3 decline. Along with that, it has biofeedback. So it's got stride length in centimeters. It will have cadence, so your steps per minute. It'll also allow to measure flight time, ground contact time, and propulsion time, which is the moment when your heel comes off the floor to your toe leaving. It also has a sled, which has kilos on it based on a grass track, not a synthetic, which makes it much harder, and up to 200 meters in distance. And it also, along with that, has run against resistance, which is similar to the sled. But if you imagine, when I run, I stop. When I cycle, I carry on. So it's got no inertia. And the other thing it has to it as well is a parachute, so you can run against what simulates wind, cool. Which is wild. Like, there is no one doing this stuff. And when you show a trainer or a layman this, they're like, oh, right. See what you're bringing to the party. Yeah, we're bringing guns to a knife fight, right? It's a serious product, okay? And if you want to buy one, drop me an email. The other one is BioStrength, which has a NASA patent motor in it, which allows us to manipulate resistance without the use of load. So we have 6 different resistance types on it, which are elastic, overload of the eccentric, deload of the eccentric. We also have viscous, which is like flywheel, so water resistance, and then we have no inertia and traditional isotonic resistance. Now, when you talk about these products to a normal trainer, it's like me taking them to Mars and be like, oh, by the way, this is the new atmosphere for you now. So it's, my job across those period of times has changed. And with those 2 products specifically, BioStrength, BioRev, which is the higher end, it's put me into different places such as, Aston Martin Aramco F1, McLaren F1. It's put me in with Loughborough Sport. It's put me with Man City. There's a Technogym newsroom video, and it's on my Instagram of me training Leeds United staff, their medical staff, their fitness staff. It really has transcended me into, being able to work with these elite clubs because of my knowledge around that product. Mm-hmm. So in turn, I think, to answer your question in a long format, it's really propelled my career, more so than anything else could have, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're all educators within the industry, you know, whether you're a gym instructor, personal trainer, we all have that kind of necessity to go and educate the end users, you know, the members of our gym facilities. And just from that small segment there, you know, you can see how impactful that can be. You know, you're picking up different threads, different terminology that you can then convey to the end user and get the most out of this equipment, because it makes me curl my toes sometimes when you see such, you know, dynamic kind of, you know, performance related equipment on the gym floor, and you've got fitness professionals just sort of, you know, helping to gather dust and not really applying themselves correctly to using the equipment and giving the member experience that you're conveying there as well, Ryan. So that's super important. Okay, great. I looked at your social media as we're on that subject.
Which one, the gym or mine?
Yours, I think.
Yeah,
oh, actually, yeah, no, it was yours.
Yeah, it's mine.
It was yours. So one of the positioning statements on there was novice strongman. Yeah, so let's go into that territory for a little while. So novice strongman. What you mentioned a little bit earlier about your events coming up. You mentioned a little bit about your sporting background, playing rugby, always being involved in athletics. Strongman's quite a niche area. So what kind of inspired you to, you know, get into that?
Well, despite this lovely accent I've managed to generate, it's not my traditional accent. So I originally come from a steel town. Well, I don't come from the steel town, I come from outside the steel town. But I come from a little place called Winston, which is near Scunthorpe. Now, Scunthorpe's pretty trendy at the moment. I mean, I wouldn't say it's trendy, but, you know, it's the only place really making British steel anymore. And it was the reason that the Parliament was open for the first time since Margaret Thatcher on a Saturday. So it'd show you my political interest a little bit. So coming from a steel town, 9 out of 10 men can weld. I mean, we're in Swansea, so I imagine it's pretty similar.
Very similar, yeah, very similar. Big coal mining and steel industry.
Exactly. So I come from a real blue collar place. Now, I've worked in a white collar industry for a long time. Now, I think I've always looked at strongman. It's very big up there. Being a big strong man is kind of part of the culture, right? You'd go down the mine, like my granddad was a miner. You'd go down the mines, you'd come back, you'd earn your living through labour. And that's what I did before I went to university. So I understood going to university would allow me not to use my hands to make a living, use my mind, which is nice. I did judo internationally as a kid. I was English #1 for a period of time in my weight category and my age. And then I did rugby, and I did rugby in the national leagues, and I played for Brunel at university. I gave up rugby because I thought, well, I'm not going to be a pro anymore. Yeah. So with judo, I was somewhat promised to be a world champion at a young age, and there was some rule changes by the IGF, which are Japanese, because of the Soviet Union disbanding, and years down later, the subsections of the Soviet Union was dominating the sport because of Sambo and other wrestling contact-based sports. So my style was picking people up and slamming them, which is quite good to watch, but, you know, it's no longer at the Olympics. Interesting, the Olympics I went to, the judo was massive because it was in France, and the French team, Teddy Renier, is an exceptional judoka, a pioneer, if you will, for French judo. So still liking the sport, but moving away. You know, I dipped my toe in BJJ, but I was playing rugby, and I still had ambitions of being on the world stage. Yeah. And I can't lie and say I didn't, because I did. So I had a friend that was doing strongwoman. She was very good. She was like, why don't you give it a go? And I flirted with the idea a lot. I'd seen it while I'd been at home. I was obviously interested. I enjoyed strength training more than playing rugby or doing judo. So it naturally was aching to compete in it. So I did my first comp and I won pretty much every event as a novice, so novice strongman. And then that was a 105 kilo. I did an open weight a couple of weeks later and I won that too. So I then did England's Most Powerful Man as a 105 kilos, and I didn't win that. I came about 9th. But it was my third comp, and it was a much bigger standard of competition. I then decided the next year I would go into the 105s and I would, you know, try my best. Now, I did a bit of a dodgy weight cut, which will lead to me now not doing dodgy weight cuts. And I did a weight cut at Body Power where I did a same day weigh-in but cut a lot of weight, and I shouldn't have done it. And I passed out under the log because I didn't understand hydration. Wow. This was a long time ago, so obviously I've learned my lesson.
Yeah, learn from your lessons.
Well, you instantly understand weight cuts a lot better once you mess one up. So nearly, I tore my plantar fascia, my foot was really swollen. So I took a little bit of time off strongman, did a little bit of MMA training because I enjoy that, but gravitated back a few months later. I then became intermediate, so it goes novice, intermediate, open weight, and then there's weight categories which sit above it. I come second and then first in inters, so I took a jump up to the opens. The following year, I believe I came 9th at England's Strongest Man open weight, and then I won in the preceding year England's Most Powerful Man as an open weight. I then did the Explosive 8 League, which was 5 really heavy shows across 3 months. Really heavy shows. One was at Gavin Bilton's gym around the corner from here.
Oh, right.
Yeah, not miles away. And then there was some in Halifax and a few up north, and then one at my gym, my first gym, which was massive for the gym, and it was really good. After that, I tore my pec. After I think come 5th or 6th at Britain's 120s. I tore my pec. I had to get that reattached. The Technogym customer that reattached it for me, which was nice of him. Small world. So I then come second in the European Deadlift Championships once I'd rehabbed that with a 370 kilo deadlift, which is kind of my thing.
Yeah, you were saying about that earlier. Deadlift's kind of your go-to, isn't it?
Deadlift specialist.
Yeah.
And then since then, I've been in the 105 kilo category on the sort of international standard.
Yeah.
Like, people always go, you don't like competing in England, do you?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, no, I got into this sport to travel. Like, I enjoy traveling, and with my job, I travel around the UK every week.
And it fits for you and your background and your persona and what you enjoy doing. It sounds like there's been a sort of a natural kind of flow into strongman, into competing and being kind of, you know, the sort of mindset of kind of achievement, you know, and progressing all the time. That, you know, that's going to inspire you to go onto more competitions and compete at a higher level, which is clearly what you've been doing, Ryan.
You don't really have a choice, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it's quite a niche area. So coupling your strongman experience and also you're a big guy as well. So, you know, I would suggest in a personal training environment, you probably got to adapt your style sometimes to communicate to different types of clientele. Am I right in saying that, or haven't you found that too much of a challenge?
I haven't found it a challenge, if I'm honest. I feel like one-on-one, I'm very natural. I struggle with people. I don't know where that came from. So I grew my personal training business very easily, but it was not from marketing. It was from referral or speaking to people on the gym floor.
Okay.
So, which I'm sure you tell all your trainers all the time to be saying hello to everyone as they walk in. I have took from being a national sales manager all the way to owning my own gym and been a PT in the middle.
Yeah.
My main thing is if I'm on the gym floor and someone looks at me, I say, hello, how are you?
Yeah.
It's not hard. If you find that hard, work on it, because that's your biggest tool. Marketing online is great, but the reality is to develop a client or a lead online is going to take a large period of time of you posting content, which is great, and we should be doing that. But at the same time, there is certainly a lost art of just saying hello and asking how someone is. If you need anything, I'm Ryan, I'll be over there. Just give me a shout. And all of a sudden, your diary's full because you've been around. I've seen it.
Yeah.
In a busy gym, it's true.
100%. Being personable is critical. You know, it's a personal relationship business, isn't it? So you have to build up that rapport, that common understanding, and ascertain if you have the ability to help the individual as well. And that only comes through conversation.
I don't think personal training is a sales business. I used to describe we had two types of trainers. We had sales and we had trainers, right? So salespeople would be able to generate lots of clients, but the retention would be awful. Trainers would get few clients, but their retention would be amazing. So they would take longer to build their business. I actually think the reality is, if you have in heart that you want that person's training to be as good as possible, and I don't mean you want, because the classic one in personal training is, oh, you've got to care about everyone. You don't. You have to care about their training and their development. You don't necessarily need to care about everyone. It doesn't have to be a satisfaction piece for you. But you do have to care that their training is going in the right direction. You have to have enough personality and patience that naturally they will get there, no matter what life throws at them. You have to have patience with it. You will be a very good trainer. Now, you don't have to be the nicest guy in the room to do that. And I think that's what we go wrong with. Oh, to be a personal trainer, you've got to be the nicest guy and care about everyone. That's not always going to be the case. Like, sometimes you have to be the hard-nosed guy that's like, you need to do better. Sometimes you need to put your arm around him. There's a real flex on that. It's not always been the nice guy.
Yeah. I think a lot of personal trainers have come from a sporting background a lot of the time. A lot of the leading PTs. So they've been used to building those social bonds, having conversations, you know, being in situations where they have to work as a team and flex, you know, to a certain degree as well. As well as being personable, one of the key traits of successful PTs is having a robust sales process.
Yes.
Now, you've got some experience in sales, but did that happen before? Did that happen before personal training or after? Or was it kind of a meld?
Yeah, it did happen before personal training, I suppose. So I got my personal training qualification in 5 days. I was working for Brunel Sport as I had a placement with them and I ended up staying on. And they were like, you get one qualification. So they paid me nothing at the time, like £11,000 for the whole year. And I was working a lot because I wanted to learn, right? And I was around, you know, Usain Bolt was training in our facility for the Diamond League. Like Linford Christie had a training group. Like the people you were around were incredible.
Cool
like,
as that,
yeah, it's such a name drop of those people. But like I got to watch them train for a long period of my university career and also work there. So it's like, what do you want? I was like, I want my level 3 in personal training because I knew it was a qualification I could take away, like my door qualification that I had was at university, and I could use and, you know, monetize it. That's the reality. I could go and earn money anywhere I went. I was a rugby player, so I fully understood that no matter where I went, if I played rugby or as a PT, I could make myself, you know, established. So I took my personal training qualification, but then when I left uni, I got offered jobs pretty quickly because I had a placement and experience in the fitness industry, which is probably my best piece of advice. If you're doing a degree, make sure you do a placement.
Yeah, nice. Practical.
Very practical. And literally, what did you learn? This, and this. I got an A-star in my placement, which was better than probably the rest of my degree, if I'm honest. I'd come away with a 2-1, but that really bumped me up.
Yeah.
So what it allowed me to do then was, we actually pushed people away for sales at Brunel. If you wanted to train in the Indoor Athletic Centre, we'd be like, nah, it's not for you. We wanted, at the time, we didn't have a commercial entity. We didn't want people training there. It was a private closed-off training facility, albeit it wasn't, but that's how we made it. We had the commercial gym over the road that was run by another body. It's not anymore. I left and managed Barnet Football Club for a while. Now, the owner of Barnet Football Club, I was his general manager. He didn't want us to push people away. He wanted people in the gym.
Okay, it's a bit of a commercial mind, yeah.
He owned Ryman, and he was the largest reseller of O2 products in Europe. He's a very rich man, very astute, and I learned probably most of my business nous immediately from him. Personal, I learned from Brunel. Business nous I learned from him. He was a hard-nosed businessman, and he was very good at it. He was a good negotiator, a very good salesman, not conventional. And his unconventional nature I didn't like his behavior towards the fitness industry. Ryan, this member here, she was called Mrs. Patel. Mrs. Patel has come to our gym once in 3 years. I want more Mrs. Patels. I don't want people in my gym. I want ghost DDs.
Sleeping members.
Sleeping members. I didn't like that. I want people using the kit as much as possible. Now, obviously, from the person buying the kit, he wants, in this, it's just an investment for him. So I left and I went to Lifestyle Fitness at the time as a national sales manager, underneath the national sales director. And my job was to go around all the underperforming gyms and make them perform. It's really
So you were like an impact sort of salesperson to go in and firefight and get them up to the level they need to, yeah?
It was rough. So I had a lovely title, given a car, all that sort of stuff. But I felt like the Grim Reaper. I was going into clubs to find out what the problem was. Yeah. Right now, thinking back, this is probably the best thing that I could have possibly ever done. I went in with my scythe and went, look, do you know what? These guys are really hardworking. Let's keep them on. Do you know what? This person's a toxic person. Let's put them on a pip. It's the reality of what the job was. I didn't stay there very long. Like, it gave me a lot of tools, but I quickly realized what the problem was. And the problem was just not being personable enough. If you're sat on your bum, people are walking through the door and you're not speaking to them, like, what are you doing? Because these gyms were so big, this is what happened. They got dirty, they got mismanaged. And that's how it went. It's not a bad display of them. I think they just got too big and then they sold part off to the gym group and they're growing back now. I then went and opened Anytime Fitness. Yeah. I wanted to do a pre-sale. And when I did the pre-sale, we did very good numbers. I think the best in the UK at the time.
Nice.
And it was off the sales knowledge I'd learned from lifestyle. Run rates, net member movement, sales percentages, all these things that we was doing. I was drawing on the board every day.
Yes, you're playing the numbers game.
I was cracking the whip, making sure that we were selling enough per day, splitting the target down, setting the targets, all these things that I'd done at Lifestyle, but on a smaller scale, and we did very well. Every Anytime Fitness manager across the UK was ringing me from franchise asking how I did it. Now my franchisee was like, please don't tell them how you did it because you didn't do it how they want to tell you. So he whispered very loudly, like, don't tell them what you did. So it's a bit of a strange one. Now, I was picking up a lot of PT clients there. So then I ended up moving away into working at a studio. I wasn't enjoying being at the studio any longer. Me and the owner of the studio had different visions. He was training more everyday people. I was leaning more towards strength athletes. And I had my own clients, but they fitted in with the strength athletes. So, or they liked that kind of training. So naturally I opened my first unit. First unit was a very small unit with a leaky roof. And if something could have gone wrong, it did. And then we went into the bigger scale gym.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of your trajectory in the fitness sector, then Ryan, you've obviously founded Maverick Gym, which has been, that's not an overnight job. You've built up your sales experience, you've built up your PT repertoire, your education, and you've got this grand plan of having your name on the door and opening your own facility. So talk us through the name, first of all, Maverick Gym. Where did that come from?
People always ask that. Yeah. So it's like, why is it called? Are you a massive Top Gun fan?
Exactly what I was going to say.
Not at all. No, probably the opposite. Scientology do keep changing me as well. Yeah, but don't give me your phone number. Anyway, so when I first got employed by Lifestyle, the guy that look, I was absolutely. I left my job and I left my job at Barnet and went to this job as a recruiter in the financial market infrastructure sector, which it literally is just basically IT guys that create databases for trading houses, right? Now, I will tell you this now, sports science graduates, I think it's like 90% going to finance. So I was like, do you know what? Yeah, I'm going to chase the money. I didn't like chasing the money. Yeah. I lasted about 4 weeks. And then the manager director sat me down and said, do you want to leave? I'll pay you 2 months. I said, here's my phone, here's my laptop, and I ran down the stairs.
Really?
Right? I never went
Simple
back.
as that, yeah.
Now, I probably didn't think that through. So I was looking for a job and I was doing contract promo, getting leads for gyms. Okay. Which again is another beneficial skill that I picked up along the way to running a gym. So, and then I got headhunted to go for a meeting. I went for a meeting. The sales director was like, can you be in Darlington tomorrow at 8 a.m? It was 6 p.m. in London. And I want you to do a presentation on yourself. Now, if you've ever been asked to do a presentation on yourself, it's not very fun, is it? So I drove up there. I think I borrowed 50 quid off my dad for fuel because I was really struggling at this point. It was a low point. I think I'd sold my Xbox as well to pay for food. So
it's good to know.
It's good.
Yeah, a lot of people. It's the reality for a lot of people. And sometimes the best decisions have been made in a position of life where you're struggling and your back's against the wall. So it's good to know that.
So I went up there, tail between my legs, thinking, I hope this works. He said, bring your passport. Now, obviously I was naive as to why he told me to bring my passport. So I did the whole presentation. I was shaking like a very scared dog. And he went, great, you got the job, go to the HR, take your passport. So I did, signed the contract on the spot. Obviously didn't have many choices. I didn't really discuss in the contract at the time when I had to borrow fuel off my dad. And I went back through. It was a very good contract for the time. And I went back through and I said, why the instant decision? He was like, I knew yesterday, I just had to get you up here to sign the contract, so I thought I'd make you do a presentation because I knew you'd be awkward. I was like, yeah, I was. And he said, I've interviewed 260 candidates and none of them have been what I wanted. I wanted a maverick, someone that doesn't do as he's told.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And later on, when I was trying to name the business, we had a few ideas, and that one stuck in my head. Unfortunately, sometimes that is me, and sometimes I do need to learn to do as I'm told. But yeah, the majority is my gym and how it runs doesn't do how it's told. It does the opposite and somehow manages to work. Yeah. We do what we want to do. And that's often a lot of my athletes and what I attract. And, sometimes it's hard to coach, but we do what we want to do.
Love the story. Yeah. That's fantastic. So that's just stuck in your mind and it's evolved into a brand.
Yeah. And it kind of is how the gym's gone as well. Yeah. No one does as they're told. Yeah.
So what sort of gym is it, right? It's a performance gym, a strongman gym. Do you cater for all abilities?
Yeah. So we train everyone.
Nice.
Which is, I know, our marketing strategy at the moment is to try and convince the world of that. We have a small group offering, which does a lot of powerlifting, strongman, Olympic lifting inside of it. We coach everyone to do that. So anyone that walks through a door, whether they've never touched a barbell in life or, you know, they're on open powerlifting as a top 20 lifter, it doesn't really matter, or elite strongman. A lot of people hop in our small group, we coach them, you know, functional training. And what I see as functional training is being able to move in as many planes as possible with as many objects, with as much load or trajectory or power. So we coach that. We also, there's a specifically designed area for small group training. 2 to 6 is the number we go off. We always have a coach. The coaches are all nationally ranked in some area of strongman at the moment. Okay. And then on the other side of the gym, we've got very specific kit, things like monoliths, speciality bars like football bars, deadlift bars, squat bars, axles, logs, monster dumbbells, circus dumbbells, atlas stones, you name it, we've got it.
Not your traditional gym setup then. It's a different environment that you've created.
Yeah, we've got calibrated powerlifting plates, you know, that's a big one. Class. Comp benches. You know, it's kind of like a strength trainer's absolute dream belt squat, reverse hyper, you know, all the key bits. For a performance gym, we've got an indoor 20-meter track. We have a stone area. We've got an in-house sports therapist, John Molyneux, who's a good friend of mine and a very keen writer. He writes for FitPro and people like that. We're also opening another side, so we're going to turn that side into just complete powerlifting and the other side into more of a strongman area with more plate-loaded kit and things like that.
Yeah, fantastic. That's cool. So small group activity, is that part of the philosophy? Do you try and onboard new members? Yeah, because it's an easy starting point. If you're thinking of personal trainers in a gym situation, sometimes it can be a nice entry point to sort of come into a small group environment where you're committed to a group.
So I'll be honest, the reason we originally switched over is I wanted to change my personal training business. I was out of the business more than I was in it. So my diary was becoming really difficult to fill. I had a lot of clients. And I also felt that I wasn't giving them the best service anymore because I wasn't as enthusiastic because I was tired. And I probably needed to take a step back from personal training, but that's not what the business wanted. And I also needed to put the prices up, in essence, to be transparent. Now, that was going to be difficult because my whole philosophy was training people, making it affordable so they could train more and get more results. So I couldn't go away from my philosophy. So I had to work out a solution on how the business could work. I could bring the trainers that I'd been cultivating that were really good and give them clients without me being in the way. Because if I'm in your facility, I'm taking all the clients. Like, I'll tell you that now. And that's my ego, but it's just the truth. And I've seen myself in this situation a few times and it becomes problematic for the gym. Now, when I own the gym, it's really problematic because it's not growing.
Yeah, of course.
So I pulled myself out, created the small group model because I saw people not being able to train as well as possible because conversation mattered to me. So I needed more people with the coaches I had, and it worked well. Now, what actually has happened is they've all got way stronger, way better, way fitter, and they've all got a big community because of it. So naturally, I had 2 or 3 motives. One was to get them training better. One was to get my coaches more involved and for me to step back. And thirdly, I needed the business to make more revenue for its time to make sure we could work the bigger facility and I could pay my staff. So I took myself out of the business and put them in. And to be honest, do I think a one-to-one PT that's got 10 clients should go towards group training? Probably not. I think they should learn their craft training one-to-one. And I actually think that we should change the qualification that you shouldn't be able to be a fitness instructor before being a personal trainer because you shouldn't be working with a group before you've worked one-to-one. Yeah. It's like me saying to you, right, we're going to play rugby, but you can't pass a ball.
It's an evolution, isn't it? Yeah. And you can stretch that to online coaching for sure. But I love that, Ryan, because I think you've touched on a really important point here of you haven't put your name as part of the brand, which allows you to disconnect yourself from the operations at some point. And for whatever reason, personal trainers these days seem to be obsessed with having their names on things, which is fine. But if you've got aspirations of building an organization and building a business beyond you, that's going to cause a headache in years to come. So it's nice that you've identified that from an early stage and you've trusted your coaches. Yeah. That must have been such an important step, pulling yourself away. 2 things there. Firstly, I was never going to name the business after myself. I think it's incredibly narcissistic. I don't need that pat on the back. It's not me.
And secondly, yeah, I always had envisions of having a big brand and maybe selling the brand. It's never a possibility that's off the table that I would sell it. Yeah. It just isn't, or have other people involved. It was never. And also I wanted to have different subsections of the business. We now have clothing, which I'm wearing.
Yeah, I can see.
Yeah, it's very nice, low key, oversized, so you don't have to pay £100 from Represent. You know, you can come to us and get it for 30.
There's 2 pictures now on this podcast, you know that.
Yeah, mindless plug. So if you like the merch, go to the site. Anyway, that, and yeah, look, because Technogym created me as an educator, and other brands too. I've worked with Scott, I worked with Stu, there's lots of other people I've worked with, and I've also done tutoring courses and things like this, and the amount of exposure, my trainers are really good, like to the point where like they're really good. They don't know how good they are, to the point of I don't want to tell them too much, but they're really good. Like if I go around all the gyms in the UK, I'll take them with me and say they're the best. Like I'm confident they're very knowledgeable, but that's because of what I've been able to learn at Technogym and bring back to them, and just go open-minded places, listen, hear things. Like I used to laugh at barefoot shoes. I used to think they was hilarious, and now I wear them all the time because I understand the reasonings.
Yeah. You touched on education there, Ryan, of your trainers and how much you believe in them and how they've sort of excelled in their role. Yes, it's all well and good bringing a bit back from what you're learning personally. Is there any structured training that you put your coaches through?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
More being around me, and I'll frequently go on rants about philosophies and training and methodologies, and I'm a big proponent of our programming and how it goes and how it's structured. I give them ultimately the last say on how they deliver their coaching. I think that's an incredibly powerful tool. If you're working for an organization that's telling you how you're running your coaching, it's not a very good organization. And that's just, and you'll get that from me straight. If you're that organization, I'll tell you, personal trainers need job satisfaction, and that comes from exercise selection. If you're not able to make your exercise selections yourself, you're not coaching the class. Oh, but you're working on technique. No one cares, right? Yeah. There's a big problem in the industry at the moment that everyone wants to be the best marketeer. When I came into the industry, everyone wanted to be the best coach in the room. Being the best coach in the room might mean you follow someone else's structure because it's a good philosophy in regards to training structure. And I'll tell you ours, you can have it. But for me, exercise selection comes down to the individual, and it comes down to the coach. Yeah. And learning that is the biggest skill you can get, bigger than anything else. So them having the ability to critically analyze someone's biomechanics on almost an instant basis with their eye is something that I've taught them intuitively, and I think that's the biggest skill they would take away.
Nice. So you've become a master trainer to your coaches, essentially,
yeah,
within that framework.
It's the most expensive thing you can outsource, so you should be good at it. Outsourcing marketing is way cheaper than training. It's the truth.
Yeah, it's true. And are you actively involved in that client journey now? So, you know, if your coaches are delivering group PT, are you still onboarding new clients, or are you completely remote?
No, I still do about 11 hours. I'm meant to be there this morning, to be honest. One lad's had to cover my... So I'd pulled out, and I've decided to jump back in because I like to feel the product. Now, not all coaches do that, or owners, sorry, but I feel like I was disconnecting a bit too much. Yeah. One of the guys that I had a business consult with a few years ago, Tyson Morrissey, is a good 105 kilo athlete. He said that he always liked to do 10 hours a week. And I genuinely do believe, as the owner of the gym, like, you should be doing 10 hours a week. There's plenty of influencers now that are saying you need to pull out and be this full-time business guy, but a lot of the time you disconnect from the business. And I see that when I work for Technogym with managers that have never been trainers. And they're so disconnected. And you'll see it when you work with your trainers, right?
It's our philosophy at your PT. You know, everyone within the management ranks have all been successful personal trainers. So I think you have to have that authenticity about you. And clearly, you know, you've demonstrated a culture there where, you know, you've inspired and developed your coaches to deliver that premium quality service.
Even the members, to be fair, some of my members are better than personal trainers. It can be painful sometimes, you know, because we end up in dialogue and I'm like, just do as you're told.
And that's the education thing as well. And that's a big area. You know, I can't have a competing strongman in front of me and not ask the question around strength training. So, you know, it's a fundamental part. We've seen a massive kind of growth spurt of strength training, performance training in every gym environment across the UK, in the last probably 5 to 10 years, we've seen a big increase, a big uptake, albeit strongman is quite a niche area. Your education and expertise, Ryan, is very much in strength. So what pillars would you see as key components of building a real robust strength program for any ability?
Well, I'm very grateful that strength's kind of come into the forefront, because it's actually given me products at Technogym. Before that was all cardio. It's actually given me a bit more of a platform. I finally got a product. So there's that, and there's also the fact that people come now. I remember the first woman that came to me and was like, "Can you teach me how to snatch?" And I was like, this was not a question I was expecting, all right? And that's all she wanted to do. Now, over the years, I've been really lucky to be around a few people that have influenced me massively, and every single coach I've worked with or has coached me, I've took a little bit away from, some more than others. The system we always run with predominantly, but this does change now, is we always do a warm-up. All right, so the warm-up's traditionally going to have an activation and a mobilize area in it. It's also going to have some sort of heart raiser in it. It doesn't have to be massive. You'll notice in our gym we've got 3 assault bikes and a ski erg. Right? We don't have massive amounts of cardio kit, but we'll use things like the sled, we'll use those, but it's a very low skill area that we jump on. We just want heart rate up. Then we're going to activate and mobilize. We're then going to potentiate the movements. So what I mean by potentiate is we're actually going to drill the movement or use a movement to prime the movements we're going to be doing. Okay. Now, this doesn't always happen with people that are a little bit more novice, because the potentiation is just them warming up the movement. Whereas the higher end we get, we add in plyometrics. We add in pre-activation or post-activation potentiation. We add in overload of band or chain. We add in isometrics, isometronics, all these things that are higher end tools that you don't always need with clients, but they're going to excel your clientele to the next level. We then look at the primary. Now, dependent on how advanced the person is, the primary is going to be the main compound for the day. Now, it doesn't matter to us if it's a fat loss client, whether it's a performance client, whether it's a hypertrophy client. They're going to be doing a primary movement. Yeah. Very simply, if primary movement is not moving up in strength, something is going wrong. So we need to address that, and that number should always be progressing linearly some way. Now, obviously, the more advanced people get, the more we need to rotate exercises. So the law of accommodation is that you can't do 90% for 3 weeks in a row. Yeah. Yes, but the asterisk on that is with the same exercise. So we can keep driving that exercises. There'll be times when we use a high frequency approach, but there'll also be times which is a full body approach of compounds. But most of the time we're driving a different exercise every 3 weeks at least. But there's lots of different ways to program that first exercise. I could write a PhD on that. Yeah. The next one down is going to be our assistance exercises. Now these are going to be exercises that help drive the main exercise. So traditionally based around structural balance, whether that could be, if we did a squat, we might do a hamstring or a hinge variation, such as an RDL. Now, it could be supersetted with knee flexion. It could be supersetted with something else, like a lunge. The next thing down is our accessories, which are going to be what isolate the muscles that help the assistance, which helps the primary. So we're actually creating a chain linearly from the bottom upwards, which is known as the PAA approach. Underneath that, accessory could be Metcon, could be metabolic conditioning, it could be mobility. It really depends on the main goal of the individual, what our accessory movements are going to be. Now, we don't always do that structure. Sometimes we do things like, I'm trying to think what it's called, like strength circuits. Okay. I'm a big fan of Christian Thibaudeau, a big fan of Charles Poliquin. A lot of people are still not. I'm not a massive Poliquin advocate, but I know what he brought to the game, and I know what I've took away from people that were mentored by him, and to go back to some of his teachings and take them with a pinch of salt. Christian Thibaudeau was a big influence on me in terms of reading, and I take a lot away from that. You'll see me use neurotypes a lot. So often my online clients, which is a big business for me now as well, with just strength-based clients, I will neurotype them and understand how they behave and what they enjoy. Also how their central nervous system or their brain proactively speaks with their muscles, and understand what training approach is going to work best, even down to myofascial. So there's a lot in our program that will come out of me just talking to our trainers, but inherently the more they listen, the better our programming gets. So the more we just have dialogue.
Yeah, and I suppose you kind of sense check how the response mechanism is as well, don't you? You constantly gathering feedback from your clients. So you mentioned the steps there, Ryan. So activations, primary exercises, accessories, built into a session or periodized over a typical period of time. How does that
That's
look?
literally one session.
That's one session.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
So what I find difficult when I do small group now, traditionally small group, they should be changing their own plates and stuff. I'm on a tight time schedule when I deliver it. So in my head, if I've got 6 people turn up, like, we need to get through these sections fast because I've got a lot that needs to get covered. And you're at that point when someone becomes more advanced where we move them into a different group. So we have a novice training group as well as the small group. We have a novice strongman group. We also do longer sessions on the weekend. We also have my kind of elite training group, or they go online, right? So my elite training group has a multitude of different young athletes in it. I've got England's strongest man under 80 kilos. I've got the 3rd strongest under 23 in the world. I've just got the 4th strongest man in England open weight. He's a young lad. He's
breeding some athletes.
Very good potential. I can't claim that. I took him on recently. So, okay. And then I've got another young lad who's an under 90 kilo natural athlete, and he's going to be exceptional. He's not won anything to name yet, but he's very talented, and he's got the greatest mindset out of all of them. He just listens. He's like a sponge. You say stuff and comes back, and very hard working. So that's my training group as such, but we have lots of athletes as well. So it kind of is a tiering effect. Once we can't fit it in an hour, you have to kind of move up.
Yeah, and I guess with that application as well, you are working on your strength, but you're also working on your cardio. It's hard moving, some of these heavy objects.
Yeah, tell me about it, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can get stuck in the static training, but the reality is across a 5-event strongman show, 2 are static, 1's loading, 2 are traditionally moving, and the moving is 60 seconds of very intense heart rate work. Yeah. Like if you're holding twice your body weight, your heart rate goes up fast.
Yeah, exactly. And your calorie burn must be through the roof as well, yeah?
So yeah, if you're doing moving events, if you're doing static, it's nothing. It's the worst. People, I need to eat loads of food. I'm like, you burnt 300 calories. It's the same amount you would have laid on the sofa.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
But you mentioned it, your compound movements, your big muscle groups activated and working hard, you're going to get some serious results.
Yes.
Okay, amazing. Good resources for personal trainers looking at enhancing their education around strength training. What comes to mind for you, Ryan? What's helped you over the years?
Books are incredible, but they're a bit dated.
What sort of books?
So Super Training by Mel C. Stiff is the Bible of strength conditioning, in my opinion. You've got so many. You could look at... The way I go down it is I look at educators. Louis Simmons is obviously a great one for looking at Russian or conjugate methods, the methods from the Soviet blocks that are now in American terminology. You've got, yes, all these doctors from the Soviet Union that I'm a big fan of, but then you've got the educators that come now that have took their research and ran with it. Tom Hibbert's a big one. He's an ex-coach of mine, very good educator. Specifically, not just in strongman, but in the strength training realm. Christian Thibodeau, very good. I'm a big fan of him. They come from the same camp. Now, in terms of resource, you can find lots of good strength training writers. Elite FTS, owned by Dave Tate from Westside Barbell originally, but very under Louis Simmons. So he's a very good archiver of lots of information. He's got lots of writers. I'm currently writing for the UK site. I've not published an article yet, but it's nearly done. But as you can imagine, it takes a while.
Yeah, of course.
So that's a really good place to go. You'll have as many educational articles in there as you could possibly read.
Yeah.
T-Nation back in the day used to be really good, but now I think it's gone a bit commercial. So Elite FTS
don't see it too much these days.
No, Elite FTS is that, but it's in its traditional sense of its grounding roots of the educational understanding. You'll read an article and underneath it as an example of programming. I think this is the best way to write an article. You need the sort of ideology of why that person wrote that program, and then to see it in its format so you can go, that makes sense. It's like a work forward. And the other place is obviously YouTube, right? YouTube's an incredible place. Now, what I would suggest doing, if you, like me, traditionally struggle with reading because you lose concentration, is to go towards the FTS or somewhere like that where you can find writers and see the author, type the name into YouTube, and watch all their content if you think it's good. So it's like a prerequisite to seeing who you can follow. Like I would have followed everyone that wrote on there: John Meadows, Christian Thibodeau, Dave Tate. All those amazing guys that have, 10 years ago, Matt Wenning is another one. All those people that was knocking out great strength content, they put out great video content now. And it's actually more natural to watch, and you take it in better. For me, I need to hear words and see visual.
I'd be exactly the same. I find it difficult to commit the time to read a book and really dive into the detail on there. Whereas if you're driving, if you're at home, or and you're into things like YouTube and Spotify and things of that nature, it's such an easy way to consume information. But I always like to understand where you get the key threads from, because there's so much nonsense, misinformation, and bump out there these days as well. So cut into resources that are, bob on in terms of, the academic side of it, and they've been verified, and it's actual, content that is viable is so important.
Yeah, I think it's one thing that people always lean towards academics. Now, it's something I'm looking at becoming more academic and adding on to my degree and getting a doctorate. I do think a lot of the research is bump. Like, you're trying it on 19-year-olds out of university. Like, we need applied knowledge. We need people that have gone into the field, worked for 10 years, 20 years, and are coming out with applied knowledge as well, layered on top of educational knowledge. It's not as easy just to take academia, and that's why vocational education is so important to a trainer, because we could read all the articles you want in terms of scientifically, but what do you actually take away from it? Your clients are not going to be the same demographic as you're seeing in these articles.
Yeah.
They're not.
Absolutely. So, and your thirst for knowledge, Ryan, is incredible, because you just said it there. You're looking at doing your doctorate. You're not stopping here. You're going to continue your education. You're going to continue to grow as an educator and as a personal trainer. And that's fantastic to see. It's great to see that you've still got that thirst, you've still got that hunger to be better and not just consolidate to where you are.
No, like everyone, it dips up and down, but you've got to keep your toe in and keep moving to keep that. Like, definitely. I mean, the more people you're around that will inspire you will help. So the more times, and you'll have ebbs and flows, but a lot of the time I just want to progress and get things better. I don't know where it comes from, but it's insatiable sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's rare. It's actually rare. I'm probably the opposite side of the coin, if I'm totally honest. Oh, I tell you, CPD, further education. I'd done my degree, and I thought that's it for me. I know enough. And you always get this kind of situation with personal trainers where you learn everything about mitochondria and anatomy and physiology, origins and insertions, and then you go into the workplace as a personal trainer and you have to market yourself, you have to sell, you have to communicate, so you don't learn much of that on your course.
But brutally honest, it's absolutely pointless. I mean, it was written 15 years ago, but the reality is only now are we developing strategies and supplements and longevity tools that even attack any of those anatomical structures. So I don't understand why we was teaching it 15 years ago, not focusing on developing it and actually teaching people the functional movements of the human body, which you don't learn in a PT course, which I have to go in and teach them for Technogym. Does anyone know what the seven fundamental movements are? You don't.
Tumbleweed.
So what do you put in your clients' programs? Oh, so what? No one?
You mentioned earlier layman's terms as well. I think a lot of the time it comes under practicality and what you're teaching. Mrs. Jones, I always use that example. What are you teaching? What are you educating? Sometimes it can be too highbrow for them to get the buy-in and the understanding and go on that education journey. There's a time and place for that conversation, but often it's not at the early part of their gym experience.
There are three things that all people want, all right? So a good friend of mine will tell you this. He says it in an aggressive way, but it comes from Sebastian Oreb, all right? He was the Australian strength coach. And here's the thing. Everyone wants to be in good shape because no one wants to look bad, all right? So everyone wants to be in good shape no matter what they say. On the other side, everyone wants to be strong. Why? Because on the flip side, no one wants to be weak. And everyone wants to be pain-free. And everyone's like, well, I don't want to be pain-free. Do you want to be in pain? No. So you want to be pain-free. So by using the 7 fundamental movements of the human body, so a lunge, a hinge, a squat, a rotation, a push and pull of vertical and horizontal nature, and some sort of gait or locomotion, they will be all of those things. If, Mrs. Jones can do all those in a week and it's, and she can tick them off across 2 sessions, she will stay healthy and live longer.
Yeah.
That is the baseline level.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not about baseline. I'm about, Ollie Patrick is obviously about minimal dosage. I'm about optimal dosage.
Yes.
So for me, it would be enough that we're always going to be progressing, not that we're going to live for longer. It's not my key point, living for longer, unfortunately. It's not what comes to my mind, albeit it's a good thing. I think about how can we ooze the most performance out of someone, and staying healthy is a number 1 marker in that.
Absolutely. And because you're in the performance game, that's critical as well. Ryan, on the podcast, we like to give the guest the last word. So being mindful that this is a podcast for fitness professionals, you've been and seen and done it all pretty much in the industry. And you're still quite young into your career, but what would be the key tips that you would share to a new personal trainer entering our sector?
Just say yes as much as possible. Like, whatever opportunity is given to you, do it. Take on as much as possible until you burn out, and then assess burnout. Until you burn out, you won't know what it is. Don't try and dance around it. I see lots of trainers like, I'm trying to grow a great lifestyle. You won't grow a great lifestyle until you burn out at least twice. You need to learn to manage burnout, and you need to say yes as much as possible while you don't have children and a wife. But that's the reality. You'll grow your business the fastest when you have the least commitments.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's a fantastic way to end this episode of the podcast. Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time to come down, share your expertise and knowledge. There's been some absolutely fascinating insights there today. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me on.
Legend.
Cheers, bro.